The war on the barren moon of Valor had turned the land into a graveyard. The once gray plains were now blackened by fire. Scattered with twisted metal and the remains of fallen machines, smoke curled upward, painting the sky in shades of red and ash. The echo of explosions had faded, replaced by the soft crackle of dying flames. For a long time there was no sound, until a weak breath broke the silence. Sergeant Daniel Cole, a human soldier of the Terran Coalition, lay motionless among the wreckage. His armor was shattered, his leg bleeding from a deep wound and his helmet cracked. The air around him was hot and heavy, making every breath a struggle. His vision blurred, colors mixing into a dull haze. His mind screamed for him to stay awake, but his body was losing strength fast. He had fought hard. His unit had pushed through the Zarth front lines, trying to buy time for civilians to escape the bombardment. But the Zarth were ruthless insectoid warriors, stronger, faster, merciless. One by one, Daniel had seen his squad fall. The last thing he remembered was the blinding flash of plasma fire and the sound of his commander's voice shouting his name. Now, only silence remained. The human tried to move, groaning as pain shot through his body. His rifle lay a few feet away, half buried under debris. He reached out weakly, but his arm refused to obey. Blood dripped slowly from a cut on his forehead. "Not yet," he whispered to himself, voice hoarse and trembling. "I'm not done yet." Above him the wind shifted, carrying the faint hum of approaching footsteps. Daniel blinked, unsure if it was real or just another fading dream. Through the dust and smoke, a figure appeared, tall and graceful with fur that shimmered gold in the dying light. Amber eyes glowed softly beneath the visor of her scout helmet. She was Vulpine, a fox-like humanoid from the forests of Lyra Prime, one of humanity's few allies in this endless war. Her name was Lyra, a reconnaissance scout of the Vulpine Vanguard. She had been searching for survivors after her squad lost contact with the human battalion. When she saw the wounded soldier, her heart tightened. "By the moons," she murmured, rushing forward. She dropped to her knees beside him, gently brushing debris off his armor. The metallic scent of blood filled her nose. "He's still alive," she breathed, pressing 2 fingers against his neck. The faint pulse beneath her touch made her chest ache with relief. Daniel's eyes opened slowly. He blinked at the strange figure hovering over him. "Vulpine," he managed to say. His voice was dry and weak. "Yes," Lyra said softly. Her tail flicked anxiously behind her as she examined his wounds. "You're lucky I found you, human. The Zarth are still near." He tried to speak, but the words came out as a whisper. "My squad?" Lyra hesitated. She looked around. The battlefield was empty except for smoke and bodies. Her ears drooped slightly. "No one else," she admitted. Daniel turned his head away, eyes burning. The silence between them was heavy. Lyra could feel the pain in him, not just physical, but deep in his soul. She understood loss. The Vulpine had lost many to this war too. She quickly reached into her pack and pulled out a small medical injector. With gentle care, she pressed it against his neck. The serum hissed softly as it entered his bloodstream, easing the pain. "This will help for now," she said. "But we can't stay here." Daniel frowned weakly. "Too dangerous." "Leave me," he muttered. Lyra's ears flattened against her head and she gave him a firm look. "No," she said simply. "You're not dying here, human. Not on my watch." With surprising strength, she lifted him onto her back, grunting under his weight. He was heavy, humans always were, but she refused to let him fall. Each step was a struggle as she moved through the wreckage, her boots sinking into the ash-covered ground. Behind them, faint lights glimmered in the distance, Zarth drones, still searching for survivors. Lyra's heart raced. She ducked behind a broken ship hull, holding her breath as the red scanning beams swept across the battlefield. Daniel stirred faintly on her shoulder, his head resting against her fur. She whispered quietly, "Shh. It's okay. I've got you." The drones passed without seeing them. Lyra exhaled slowly, her chest rising and falling. The danger wasn't over, but for now they were alive. As the first light of dawn broke over the ruined horizon, Lyra looked down at the unconscious human she carried. His face was pale but peaceful, and his blood had soaked into her uniform. She whispered to herself, "You fought for us, human. Now it's my turn to fight for you." And with that promise, she stepped into the wasteland's shadows, determined to protect the wounded soldier at any cost. The night over Valor was long and cold. The moon's light barely touched the ground, and the air smelled of burnt metal and smoke. Lyra moved silently through the wasteland, her every step careful and light. On her back, the wounded human soldier Daniel Cole hung weakly, his head resting against her shoulder. His breathing was uneven, each inhale sounding like a struggle against death itself. Her fur was matted with his blood. Every few steps she could feel him shift or groan softly, his pain echoing in the quiet night. She whispered under her breath, "Hold on, human." Just a little more. Behind them, the world still burned. The glow of distant fires lit up the horizon. Somewhere out there, the Zarth drones hunted the battlefield, scanning for any signs of life. Lyra knew she didn't have much time. The moment those machines found them, it would be over. She made her way toward the Hollow Veins, a canyon system known for its twisting tunnels. It was the only place she could hide until rescue arrived, if rescue ever came. Her body ached from carrying him, but her spirit refused to break. Daniel stirred a little, his voice weak and raspy. "Where are we?" Lyra looked down at him gently. "We're leaving the battlefield. You're safe with me," he gave a tired smile. "You should have left me there." She shook her head, her amber eyes glowing faintly in the dark. "I don't leave people behind, especially not someone who fought for us." Her words carried warmth, and for a moment Daniel felt a small spark of comfort. He closed his eyes again, drifting in and out of consciousness. As Lyra reached the edge of the canyon, a faint mechanical hum filled the air. Her sharp ears perked up, her heart thudding in her chest. "No," she whispered. The drones were close. Red lights appeared between the rocks, scanning in wide arcs. The sound of buzzing wings echoed through the canyon walls. Lyra pressed herself and Daniel against a broken steel panel, holding her breath. The glowing red sensors passed dangerously close to their hiding spot. She could almost feel the heat of the scanners on her fur. Daniel woke slightly, eyes barely open. "They're coming?" "Yes," she whispered. "But they won't find us." He tried to move, his hand brushing her arm. "Go. You can run faster alone." Lyra turned to him, her gaze sharp. "And leave you to die?" "Never." The conviction in her voice was strong, stronger than the fear that surrounded them. She waited until the drones moved away before quietly continuing deeper into the canyon. Her paws crunched softly on the rocky ground, each sound echoing faintly. Finally, they reached a narrow cave entrance hidden behind thick boulders. Lyra squeezed through, dragging Daniel gently inside. The cave was dark, cool, and silent, safe for now. She lowered him carefully against the wall and sat beside him, exhausted. His armor was heavy and cold, the metal cutting into her fur. But she didn't complain. Instead, she took out her small medical kit again. With trembling hands, she began cleaning his wounds, using what little water she had left. Daniel flinched but didn't resist. "You saved me," he said quietly. Lyra didn't answer right away. She focused on wrapping his leg, her tail curling around them for warmth. "You humans saved us first," she finally replied. "Our homeworld would have fallen without your armies. This is only fair." He stared at her through half-closed eyes. "Fair doesn't mean easy." That made her smile faintly. "No, but it means right." They sat there in silence for a while. The only sound was the soft dripping of water deeper in the cave. Outside, the night wind carried the distant roars of alien engines. Daniel looked up at the ceiling, his voice soft. "Why do you care, Lyra? You don't even know me." Lyra's ears flicked slightly, and she turned toward him. "Because I've seen too much death. Too many good ones lost. I won't let another one fade into the dust if I can stop it." There was something in her tone, something raw and honest, that made Daniel feel a strange peace. He tried to speak again, but exhaustion pulled him under. When he finally drifted into unconsciousness, Lyra stayed awake. She sat near the entrance of the cave, listening to the wind and keeping her weapon close. Her golden eyes glowed faintly in the dark, filled with both fear and determination. Outside, the drones passed by again, their red lights sweeping over the canyon like hunting predators. But inside the cave, Lyra remained still, silent and ready. She looked once more at the sleeping human. His face was pale, but his chest rose and fell steadily. A faint smile crossed her lips. "You're not alone anymore," she whispered softly. "I'll protect you, no matter what comes." The night continued to stretch endlessly, but in that small cave hope burned quietly, fragile yet alive. The dawn came quietly over the canyons of Valor. painting the sharp rocks in a faint orange glow. The air was cold and thin. Inside the small cave, Lyra sat near the entrance, her back against the wall, holding her plasma dagger close to her chest. Her golden eyes never stopped scanning the shadows. Beside her, Daniel Cole, the wounded human soldier, slept restlessly. His breathing was shallow but steady. She could see the pain still written across his face even in sleep. Every time he twitched, her ears flicked in worry. Lyra hadn't slept the whole night. She couldn't. The sound of Zarth drones had passed by several times, and though they didn't find them, she knew it was only a matter of time before something worse came. And she was right. Far above, the dark sky split open as a transport pod descended with a deep metallic growl. It crashed into the valley floor, kicking up clouds of dust and debris. The sound echoed through the canyon like thunder. Lyra's fur bristled instantly. Her sharp hearing picked up the heavy footsteps that followed. Slow, deliberate, powerful. A new enemy had arrived. His name was Kreth, one of the Zarth Dominion's enforcers. Taller than any human, armored in black chitin that shimmered like wet glass, his presence carried fear like a shadow. His eyes glowed with a cold blue light as he scanned the area, his clawed feet scraping against stone. The human lives, Kreth hissed in his native tongue. The Vulpine hides him. I smell their fear. He activated his tracking visor, following the faint heat signatures left on the rocks. Each step brought him closer to the canyon's heart, closer to the cave where Lyra and Daniel hid. Inside, Lyra felt the vibration through the ground. She froze, ears twitching. No, she whispered under her breath. Not now. Daniel stirred awake, blinking in confusion. What's happening? Lyra crouched low, her tail flicking nervously. Something's coming, she said. A hunter. He tried to sit up, but pain shot through his leg. You need to go, he said, voice strained. If they find me, they'll kill you too. She turned to him sharply. I told you before, human, I don't leave people behind. But you'll die. He insisted. Lyra's eyes softened. Maybe, but I'd rather die protecting someone who fought for my people than run and live with the shame of leaving you. Daniel wanted to argue, but the determination in her voice stopped him. She meant every word. He lowered his head in silence, his hands trembling slightly as he reached for his broken sidearm. It still had 1 or 2 charges left, barely enough for one last fight. The ground shook as Kreth approached. His massive form cast a shadow at the cave's entrance. The low growl of his breath echoed inside. I know you are here, he hissed. The human cannot hide from me. Lyra took a deep breath, her heart pounding. She placed herself between Daniel and the entrance, dagger glowing faintly blue. Stay down, she whispered to him. The next moment, the entrance exploded in a burst of light and rock. Kreth forced his way in, ducking under the low ceiling, his glowing eyes landing directly on them. He smiled, a cruel, terrifying expression. Found you, he said in broken galactic common. Lyra didn't hesitate. She lunged forward, her blade striking across his arm. Sparks flew as it glanced off his armor, leaving a small burn. Kreth roared, backhanding her across the cave. She slammed into the wall, pain shooting through her ribs. Daniel tried to raise his pistol, firing a weak blast that hit Kreth's shoulder. It barely slowed the monster down. Kreth stepped closer to Daniel, towering over him. Human soldier, he hissed. You fought well, but this is your end. Before he could strike, Lyra leapt at him again, landing on his back and stabbing the joint near his neck. Kreth screamed in rage, slamming her against the wall again. She hit the ground hard, coughing blood but refusing to let go of her weapon. Run, she shouted at Daniel. Now! Daniel gritted his teeth, pain making him dizzy. Not without you. Kreth turned toward him, eyes blazing. Foolish creatures, he spat. You think loyalty will save you? Lyra wiped the blood from her mouth, pushing herself up with trembling arms. No, she said weakly, but it makes us stronger than you. She stood again, dagger raised. Her body trembled, but her spirit burned like fire. Daniel forced himself upright too, holding his broken pistol. Side by side, human and Vulpine faced the alien enforcer. The cave filled with the sound of heavy breathing, dust floating in the dim light. It was clear, one side would not leave this place alive. Kreth flexed his claws, ready to strike again. Then die together, he growled. Lyra looked at Daniel briefly and whispered, No matter what happens, don't give up. And as the first rays of dawn touched the canyon floor, the battle for survival began. 1 human, 1 Vulpine, standing against the might of a monster. The cave shook as the fight began. Dust fell from the ceiling and the echoes of claws and metal filled the dark air. Lyra stood her ground, her dagger glowing bright blue, while Kreth, the towering alien enforcer, moved closer with slow, powerful steps. Behind her, Daniel struggled to keep his broken pistol steady, his wounded leg dragging uselessly against the rocky floor. The air was thick with fear, but there was something stronger in that space. Courage. Kreth's sharp mandibles clicked in a sound that was both a growl and a laugh. "You cannot win," he hissed. "You are small, fragile things. The Dominion will erase your kind from the stars." Lyra bared her fangs, tail lashing behind her. "You talk too much." She dashed forward, faster than his heavy frame could move. Her blade sliced across his chest, sending a spray of blue blood onto the cave wall. Kreth roared, spinning around and striking with his clawed arm. The blow hit her side, throwing her against a boulder. She gasped, feeling pain shoot through her ribs. Still, she didn't drop her weapon. Daniel fired again, and a single shot that hit Kreth's shoulder. The plasma bolt burned into the armor, leaving a smoking mark but doing little else. The gun beeped weakly when empty. "Damn it," he muttered, tossing the useless weapon aside. Kreth turned his gaze toward Daniel, mandibles curling into a cruel smile. "You are the one the Dominion fears most, the human, the destroyer race." He raised his arm to strike. Lyra's body moved before her mind could think. She jumped between them, blocking the blow with her dagger. The force sent her to her knees, her arms trembling, but she held firm. Her golden eyes glared up at the alien. "You want him," she growled. "You'll have to go through me first." Kreth snarled, pushing harder. "You think yourself a warrior, little fox?" Lyra's teeth clenched. "No, I think myself his friend." With a sudden twist, she cut upward, slashing deep into Kreth's arm. The alien howled in rage, stumbling back. Lyra collapsed to the ground, gasping for breath. Daniel crawled toward her, his hands shaking. "You're hurt?" She interrupted him with a weak smile. "I've been hurt before. Stay down, human." Kreth's fury filled the cave like a storm. "Enough!" he shouted, his deep voice shaking the rocks. He charged, his tail whipping through the air like a blade. The tip grazed Lyra's shoulder, tearing her armor and drawing blood. She screamed in pain but didn't stop moving. Daniel looked around desperately. There had to be something, anything, he could use. His eyes fell on a broken plasma grenade near the wall, half buried in the dust. It was damaged, but maybe still active. He crawled toward it while Kreth's attention stayed on Lyra. She darted around the cave, using her speed to dodge the alien's powerful swings. Each move was slower than the last, her energy fading, her breaths coming quick and short. "Human!" Kreth roared, realizing Daniel was moving. "You cannot escape." Daniel ignored him, his fingers fumbling with the grenade's cracked casing. He whispered under his breath, "Come on, come on." Lyra stumbled and fell hard, her dagger clattering away. Kreth loomed over her, raising his blade arm high for the final strike. "Your kind are weak," he growled. Lyra looked up at him, her vision blurring from pain and blood loss. "Maybe," she whispered, "but we fight for something stronger than power." Just as Kreth's arm came down, Daniel shouted, "Hey, Bugface!" Kreth turned his head. Daniel held up the glowing grenade. "Catch!" He threw it with all the strength he had left. The device landed at Kreth's feet and exploded in a blinding flash of blue fire. The blast threw everyone backward. Rocks cracked, the cave wall shook, and a deafening roar echoed through the canyon. Smoke filled the air. When the dust settled, Kreth was on one knee, his armor cracked and burning. Lyra lay near Daniel, both coughing and struggling to breathe. Kreth staggered up again, impossibly still alive. "You will not stop me," he hissed, his voice broken but full of hate. Lyra tried to stand but collapsed. "Daniel," she whispered weakly. He grabbed his sidearm again, then one charge left. He looked at her, at the alien, and at the rising sun glowing faintly through the cracks in the cave. "For Earth," he said softly. "For her." He fired. The shot hit Kreth right through the chest where his armor had already split. The alien's body jerked, his eyes flickering with fading light. He made a strangled sound before collapsing to the ground with a heavy thud. Silence followed. Deep, final silence. Daniel fell back against the wall, exhausted. Lyra dragged herself closer, her breathing ragged. She smiled faintly, her fur covered in dust and blood. "You did it." He looked at her with tired eyes. "No," he murmured. "We did it." She laughed weakly, a soft sound full of pain and pride. "Maybe humans aren't so fragile after all." "And maybe Vulpines aren't just scouts," he replied with a grin. For a moment, neither said anything. They simply sat there side by side, surrounded by the ruins of battle. The rising sun spilled light into the cave, washing over them like a quiet promise. Whatever happened next, they both knew one truth: they had stood together, and they had survived. The air inside the cave was thick with smoke and dust. The echoes of the explosion still rang faintly through the canyon. Broken rocks lay scattered everywhere, and the smell of burned metal filled the air. For a long moment, nothing moved. Then slowly Daniel Cole opened his eyes. His ears rang, his head throbbed, and pain pulsed through every part of his body. He turned his head and saw Lyra lying beside him. Her armor was torn, her fur covered in dust and blood. She was breathing, but each breath came with a small, painful sound. Daniel forced himself to move closer. His body screamed in protest, but he didn't stop. "Hey," he whispered weakly. "Hey, you still with me?" Lyra's ears twitched. Her golden eyes fluttered open, dim but alive. "You're still here?" she whispered, voice barely audible. "Yeah," Daniel said, giving her a small smile. "Not so easy to get rid of me." She tried to laugh, but it came out as a soft, painful breath. "You humans, always making things harder than they need to be." He chuckled weakly. "Guess we're stubborn like that." Around them, the cave glowed faintly from the dying blue flames of the grenade blast. The alien enforcer Kreth lay motionless on the ground. His black armor cracked and melted. His blue blood pooled beneath him, steaming against the cold stone. The monster was dead, truly dead this time. But victory didn't feel like glory. It felt heavy. Daniel leaned back against the wall, closing his eyes for a moment. "He's gone," he muttered. "It's finally over." Lyra stared at the alien's body, her tail lying limp on the ground. "No," she said softly. "It's not over. Not for us." He opened his eyes again, looking at her. She was right. They were still trapped in the canyon, both injured and exhausted. If more Zarth came, they wouldn't be able to fight again. He reached for his pack, searching for his communicator. The small device sparked weakly, the signal light broken. "No connection," he muttered. Lyra sighed. "Then we move when you can stand." He looked at her in disbelief. "Lyra, you can barely breathe." Her ears drooped slightly, but her eyes stayed steady. "I've had worse," she said quietly. "We can't stay here. The smoke will draw attention." Daniel stared at her for a moment. Despite her injuries, despite everything, she still thought about survival. About him. He felt a deep ache in his chest, not just from the wounds, but from something heavier, something unspoken. He crawled closer and took her hand gently. Her fur was warm, even through the dirt and blood. "You saved me more times than I can count," he said softly. "You didn't have to do that." Her gaze met his, soft and tired. "You fought for my people," she whispered. "You didn't have to do that either." They shared a quiet moment, both too weak to say more. Outside, the wind howled through the canyon, carrying the faint sounds of distant engines. Daniel's heart sank. "More Zarth?" Lyra closed her eyes and listened carefully. "No," she said finally. "Those are ours. Vulpine rescue ships. They're searching the battlefield." Relief washed through Daniel like a slow wave. "Then we made it," she smiled faintly. "Maybe if they find us in time," he squeezed her hand. "They'll find us. They have to." Minutes passed like hours. Daniel's vision began to fade in and out. His wounds burned and his body felt heavier with every breath. He turned his head toward Lyra. Her eyes were half closed now, her body trembling from blood loss. He reached out weakly, brushing her shoulder. "Hey, stay with me," he whispered. "You can't leave now." Her lips curved into a faint, tired smile. "You humans, always giving orders." "Only when I'm right," he said, forcing a small grin. She laughed softly, her voice breaking. "Then I suppose I'll listen this time." A bright flash of light filled the cave entrance. A beam of blue scanned through the smoke. A Vulpine rescue drone. Lyra's eyes widened faintly. "They found us." Daniel smiled weakly, the corners of his eyes glistening. "Told you." He leaned his head back against the wall, breathing slowly. "You're gonna be fine now." Lyra looked at him with soft eyes. "We're both going to be fine," she whispered. "You hear me, human? You don't get to die before me." He chuckled quietly. Wouldn't dream of it. The sound of engines grew louder as rescue teams approached. Voices echoed through the canyon, Vulpine soldiers calling her name. Lyra finally relaxed, her head resting gently against the stone floor. Daniel's eyes began to close. The last thing he saw before slipping into unconsciousness was Lyra reaching toward him, her expression full of relief and something more, something almost human. As the rescuers rushed in, the light grew brighter, and the nightmare of the battlefield faded into silence. For now, at least they were safe. The war had taken much, but it hadn't taken everything, because even on that broken world surrounded by fire and blood, a bond had been born. One made not of duty or survival, but of something deeper. Something neither of them could ever forget. The soft hum of an engine filled the air. Bright white light shone through the thin veil of Daniel's eyelids. For a moment he thought he was still in the cave, surrounded by dust and smoke. But when he finally opened his eyes, he saw clean metal walls, glowing blue panels, and smooth silver ceilings. The air was calm, sterile, and cold. He was on a Vulpine medical ship. Daniel blinked slowly, confusion clouding his mind. He tried to move, but pain shot through his ribs and shoulder. His arm was bandaged and his chest wrapped tightly with medical fabric. He felt weaker than he ever had before. A soft voice spoke near him. "Easy, human. You're safe now." He turned his head slightly and saw Lyra standing beside his bed. She looked different, her fur brushed clean, her wounds mostly healed, wearing a light gray uniform. But her eyes still carried that familiar warmth, that quiet strength he had seen even in battle. "Lyra," his voice cracked, rough and tired. "We made it," she smiled gently. "Yes, we did." He tried to sit up, but she placed a gentle hand on his chest. "Don't push yourself. The healers said your body needs time." Daniel sighed and sank back into the bed. "How long have I been out?" 3 days, she said softly. "You lost a lot of blood. They said it was a miracle you survived at all." He gave a weak laugh. "Guess humans are tougher than we look." Her tail flicked lightly behind her. "Tough, yes. But reckless, too." For a while, neither of them spoke. The silence wasn't heavy, it was peaceful. Outside the large viewing window beside his bed, stars drifted across the black sea of space. A distant planet glowed blue and gold far below. Daniel stared at it quietly. "That's not your home world, is it?" Lyra shook her head. "No, that's one of the outposts near our border. We brought the wounded here to recover. The war is still raging on the other side," he frowned. "So it's not over?" Her ears lowered slightly. "No, not yet," he sighed. "It never ends, does it? One fight after another." Lyra looked at him carefully. "It ends when people like you stop giving up." Her words caught him off guard. He turned to face her, seeing something deep and honest in her eyes. Gratitude, respect, maybe even affection. She sat beside his bed, her tail curling neatly around her legs. "When I first saw you, I thought humans were wild creatures, fragile, unpredictable, always rushing into danger without thinking." Daniel chuckled softly. "You weren't wrong. But," she continued, "you fought not just for yourself, you fought for us. For people you didn't even know. That's something my kind rarely understands. That's something I'll never forget." He looked down at his bandaged hands. "I didn't do it for medals or thanks. I just couldn't watch you die. Not after everything we've been through." Lyra's voice softened. "You almost did die. For me." Their eyes met again. Quiet, emotional, full of unspoken things. Daniel smiled faintly. "Guess I need better timing." She laughed softly, a sound that eased the tension in the room. "Guess you do." Moments later, a young Vulpine medic entered, checking Daniel's vitals and adjusting a small IV tube. "He's healing fast," the medic said, smiling at Lyra. "Stronger than expected." Lyra nodded. "He's a soldier. They don't break easily." When the medic left, Daniel leaned his head back against the pillow. "You've been here the whole time, haven't you?" Her ears twitched slightly. "Someone had to make sure you didn't run off again." He smiled weakly. "You could have gone back to your unit." She looked out the window at the stars. "I did. I reported the mission. They told me I was free to rest." Her gaze softened. "I chose to stay. There was no need for more words." The silence that followed said everything. Daniel turned his head slightly toward her. "Thank you, Lyra, for everything." She gave a gentle smile, one that reached her golden eyes. Don't thank me, human. You saved my life. I only returned the favor. Outside, the ship drifted through the vast ocean of stars, leaving the war behind, if only for a while. Inside the quiet medical room, two soldiers from different worlds sat side by side, connected by something that no border, no species, and no war could destroy. Lyra stood to leave, pausing at the door. Rest now, Daniel. You'll need your strength soon, he blinked. Why, you planning another fight? Her lips curved into a small smile. No. But the council wants to meet the human who saved a Vulpine commander's life. He groaned lightly. Great politics, she laughed softly. Don't worry. I'll be right there with you. Daniel smiled, his heart warming. Wouldn't have it any other way. As she left the room, he stared out the window once more. The stars shimmered quietly, reflecting in his eyes. For the first time in months, he felt peace. Fragile, fleeting, but real. Somewhere in the darkness, hope was beginning to grow again. And in that quiet corner of the galaxy, among wounded hearts and endless stars, a human soldier and a Vulpine warrior had found something worth fighting for. Not war, not survival, but each other. The Grand Council chamber was quiet, filled with rows of silver seats and glowing crystal lights. Vulpine leaders sat in a half-circle, their sharp eyes focused on the two figures standing before them, Commander Lyra and Human Sergeant Daniel Cole. Daniel's uniform was clean but simple, the sleeves rolled up to hide the bandages beneath. He still walked with a slight limp, yet his stance was strong. Lyra stood beside him in full command attire, her fur brushed and her expression calm, though her tail flicked nervously behind her. The elder in the center, High Chancellor Vera, leaned forward. Her silver fur shimmered under the lights and her voice carried the weight of authority. Commander Lyra, she began, you disobeyed direct retreat orders, risked an entire platoon, and brought a human soldier into restricted Vulpine territory. Explain yourself. Lyra's ears twitched slightly, but her voice remained steady. Because he saved my life, and because without him none of us would have survived the Zarth ambush. Murmurs rippled through the council. Daniel stood silently beside her, his jaw tight. He had faced alien soldiers, but this kind of scrutiny felt worse. The Chancellor's gaze shifted to him. Human, you fought on our soil without authorization. Why? Daniel took a slow breath. His voice was calm, though his heart pounded. Because I couldn't leave her behind. Not when she was wounded. Not when the enemy was still out there. I didn't do it for glory. I did it because it was right. One of the younger council members leaned forward. You expect us to believe a human risked his life for one of us out of kindness? Daniel met his gaze. Believe what you want. But in that canyon, it wasn't about species. It was about survival. About not letting someone die when you can help them. For a moment, silence filled the room. Lyra glanced at him, pride and emotion flickering in her golden eyes. Then the Chancellor spoke again. And what of your people, Human Sergeant? They have long seen us as rivals. Do you not fear punishment for aiding us? Daniel gave a faint, tired smile. I've seen too much death to care about politics. Maybe if more of us fought for each other instead of against, this war wouldn't have gone on so long. That line hung heavy in the air. Even the guards near the doors looked up as if struck by the weight of his words. Lyra stepped forward. He's right. The Zarth feed on our divisions. They win when we see each other as enemies. But on that battlefield, I saw something different. I saw courage, not human courage, not Vulpine courage. Just courage. The Chancellor's eyes softened slightly, but her tone stayed formal. And you believe this? Bond between you proves something greater? Lyra nodded firmly. Yes, it proves that trust can exist between our species. That peace is possible, Daniel added quietly. It proves that friendship can survive even in war. There was another pause. Then one of the elder counselors stood. Perhaps, she said thoughtfully, it is time we stopped seeing humans as outsiders. The room erupted in soft whispers. The Chancellor raised a hand to silence them. Her eyes lingered on Daniel, studying him for a long, quiet moment. Then finally she spoke. Sergeant Daniel Cole, Commander Lyra, you have both shown great courage and great defiance. Under normal law, you would face punishment. But today, she paused, her voice softening. Today you remind us what honor truly means. Daniel blinked, unsure of what to say. The Chancellor continued. The Vulpine Council grants you both recognition, not for following orders, but for following conscience. You are free to go. Lyra exhaled slowly, relief washing over her face. Daniel smiled faintly and nodded in gratitude. Thank you, Chancellor. As they turned to leave, Vera's voice followed them. Human, Commander. Remember this, the bond you share now carries more power than you think. Use it well. Outside the chamber, the long corridors glowed softly with blue light. Lyra walked beside Daniel in silence until they reached a large viewing deck. The stars stretched endlessly beyond the glass, quiet and infinite. Daniel leaned against the rail, looking out. So, we're not in trouble? Lyra laughed softly, her ears tilting playfully. Not today, he smiled. That's new. They stood there together side by side, bathed in starlight. For a while, neither spoke. The war still raged far away, but here, in this peaceful corner of the galaxy, something had changed. Lyra looked at him finally, her expression gentle. What will you do now, Daniel? He turned to her, eyes thoughtful. I don't know. Maybe go home, maybe stay here a while. Her tail flicked lightly. If you stay, you'll be welcome among my people. He smiled warmly. And if I leave? She met his gaze, her voice quiet but full of meaning. Then I'll find you again. Wherever you go. A faint shimmer of emotion passed between them, something deep and unspoken. Daniel nodded slowly. Then I guess, this isn't goodbye. Lyra smiled, the kind of smile that reached her eyes. No, human. It's not. The stars outside burned brighter like silent witnesses to the moment. Two warriors from different worlds, bound not by war but by the simple, powerful truth that courage and compassion know no species. And somewhere beyond those stars, a quiet hope was born that maybe, just maybe, the galaxy could learn from a wounded soldier and a Vulpine warrior who refused to let hate win.